Hello. There are five main areas in which we make errors when communicating clearly. The first one is called unspecified nouns and pronouns. So that's when people say things like, people's one of them. That's when people say things like people, they, them, those, which doesn't actually mean anything unless you make it more specific by saying, so who's that then? Or what specifically are you referring to? So using unspecified nouns and pronouns doesn't communicate clearly. Similarly to that is unspecified verbs. So if you say something like, he's doing that wrong, then the question then is, what do you mean by doing it? Doing what? And what do you mean by wrong? So again, it's unspecified. It's not clear. He's doing it wrong. He's just unclear. So again, you'd ask things like, what do you mean by doing, and doing what wrong? Exactly how? And try and specify it and clarify it. Another one is where they call them nominalizations. And what this means is it's something that should be a verb, but it's being used as a noun. So a typical example would be a relationship. Basically, we relate to each other. We're not in a relationship. Because if you say you're in a relationship, it sort of gives it a life of its own. And similarly, decisions. So we decide, we don't make decisions. So if you say, I'm having trouble making decisions, the question then is, well, exactly what is it about the way you decide that is causing the problem? You need to be more specific. So using what should be verbs as nouns is called a nominalization. Now, in a really good book I've just been reading called Mind Works by Anne Linden, she says that the way to spot these is if it can't fit in a wheelbarrow, that's meant to be a wheelbarrow. If it doesn't fit in a wheelbarrow, then it's not a noun. So nouns can fit in a wheelbarrow, but things like decisions and relationships, you can't put them in a wheelbarrow. So that's a third element of unclear communication. Another one is when people say always, never, so none at all, anything like that. That's called a polarity statement, because basically what you're saying is you're generalizing. So if you're saying things like it always happens to me, or I never do well at this, then the question then becomes, well, when you say always, you can't think of a time when that wasn't the case. Or when you say always, is that always what? Never any exception to that. And you can specify that actually most of the time when people are using terminology like this, it's just not correct. It doesn't always do this, and it isn't always like that. Generally, it's sometimes like that, but not always. And if you specify it, it becomes much clearer. And then this is the other really important one, is mind reading. And that's where you make assumptions as to what people are thinking and what they're likely to do, but without really finding out. Now, the interesting thing about all of this and the way it applies in the business world is this is why you need to ask the right sort of questions when you're selling, for example, in a sales process, because you need to make any of these things more specific. And most objections we get are sort of dressed up in one of these areas, or you can't work out why someone doesn't appear to be interested in what it is you're selling. And you can clarify most of those areas of misunderstanding by asking the right sort of questions. And the right sort of questions are covered in a book called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, which is, I think it's about 20 or 30 years old. And the SPIN stands for situation, i.e. what is the position at the moment. P stands for, and what's the problem with that? I is, and so what does that mean? What's the implication? And then N stands for needs payoff, i.e. what would it be worth to you to solve this problem? It's called spin selling, and it's a really excellent approach in sales. And it might be something that I'll come on to in a future presentation. So I hope you found that useful. If you wanted to find out more about how being part of a mastermind group might help you take your business forward and your life forward, really, have a look at businessroundtableuk.co.uk. Hope you found that interesting today. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.